Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
My wife, Laura, announced the divorce and claimed the house in the same breath. "You can't afford to fight me," she said with absolute certainty. I looked at her and answered, "You're right." A week later, she served me the papers. When the case was called, the most expensive and feared divorce attorney in the city walked in and took the seat beside me. He looked straight at her and said, "He doesn't have to pay me. I'm his big brother." Laura told me on a quiet Tuesday evening that the marriage was finished. There was no tremor in her voice, no flicker of sorrow in her eyes. Just cold triumph. We were in the living room of the house we had poured 8 years of sweat and dreams into, and she spoke like someone reading the terms of a hostile takeover. "It's done, James," she said, sliding a thick folder across the coffee table. "I've already retained counsel. These are the conditions." I never touched the folder. She was eager to recite them anyway. She wanted the house, the one my grandfather had helped me buy with the first big check he ever wrote me. She wanted 70% of the savings we had built together. She wanted alimony for no fewer than 5 years. It wasn't an offer. It was a demand for total capitulation. When she finished, she leaned back with a satisfied little smile. "Let's not make this ugly, James," she said, her tone soaked in fake sympathy. "Be realistic. You teach shop class at the high school. You do fine, but you'll never keep up with my attorney's billable hours. My lawyer will bleed you dry before we even get to trial. Just sign and spare yourself the pain." I sat there studying the woman I had once loved more than breathing, and something inside me went very still and very cold. She didn't simply want out. She wanted to grind me into dust on her way through the door. She believed I was powerless, that I let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. Then I met her eyes, let my shoulders slump just enough, and gave her exactly what she expected. "You're right." The victory lit her face like sunrise. She had broken me without lifting a finger. She rose, smoothed her blouse, and said, "Good. I knew you'd see reason. You'll be served next week." She left the room without looking back. Here's what Laura knew for certain. I lived modestly. I didn't have a spare $50,000 lying around for legal fees. She also knew I had an older brother, Ryan. What she was counting on, what she had witnessed herself, was that Ryan and I had not exchanged a single word in 5 years. Ryan is not a teacher. Ryan is a weapon in a custom suit. He is the divorce attorney other attorneys whisper about in hallways. His name alone makes opposing counsel sweat. And ever since our parents passed, he and I had been strangers, divided by one stupid, stubborn fight over the family house we grew up in. I had wanted to keep it as a living memory. Ryan had wanted to sell it, split the cash, and close the chapter. The argument had been brutal. Words were said that can't be unsaid. We chose pride over each other and hadn't spoken since. Laura had been in the room for the tail end of that explosion. In her mind, my only possible lifeline had been severed years ago. She thought she was moving against a man with no resources and no allies. She miscalculated. For 3 days after her announcement, I barely slept. She was right that I couldn't fight her with money I didn't have. The idea of losing my home, my savings, everything I had worked my whole adult life for, felt like drowning. On the 4th day I hit bottom. And from the bottom, the only direction left is up. I swallowed every shred of the pride that had cost me my brother and looked up his private cell number. My hands shook as I dialed. I expected voicemail or maybe his assistant telling me he was in court. Instead, after 2 rings, I heard the voice I hadn't heard in half a decade. "Hello, Ryan," I said, and my own voice cracked like a kid's. "It's James." Dead silence. I thought he might end the call. "Jamie?" he said finally, using the childhood version of my name. "What happened?" Everything spilled out. Laura's demands, her icy confidence, the way she had weaponized my salary against me, and finally her smug parting shot. "You can't afford a lawyer to fight me. Another long pause. When Ryan spoke again, the temperature on the line dropped 20 degrees. She said, "What exactly?" I repeated it. He exhaled once, slow and dangerous. "When is the first hearing?" "Next Tuesday, downtown courthouse." "I'll be there," he said. "Do not speak to her. Do not speak to her lawyer. Do not sign a damn thing. Just show up. I'll handle the rest." We hung up. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Laura thought she had neutered me. She had just handed me a loaded cannon. Update 1: The morning of the first hearing was cold and wet, the sky the color of wet cement. I walked into the courthouse alone, wearing the only good suit I own, the one I save for weddings and funerals. This felt like both. The courtroom smelled of bleach and old wood. Laura was already seated at the plaintiff's table, dressed like she was about to close a $1 million deal. Charcoal suit, perfect hair, posture that screamed winner. Beside her sat her attorney, a smug, silver-haired man who looked like he billed by the smirk. They were chuckling about something when I entered. Laura glanced up, saw me, and her smile softened into pity. She expected me to look wrecked. I kept my face blank, walked to the defendant's table, set down my battered leather briefcase, and waited. Her lawyer strolled over like a man who already owned the room. "Mr. Carter," he said, voice dripping honey and venom. "Glad you could make it. Reviewed my client's very reasonable proposal, I assume? If you're ready to sign today, we can wrap this up quickly." "I'm waiting for my attorney," I answered. He actually laughed out loud. "Your attorney?" "Of course." "Well, try not to waste the court's time." He returned to his table. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, took the bench. Carter versus Carter. Are both parties present and represented? Laura's lawyer stood. Alan Hargrove for the petitioner. Mrs. Laura Carter, Your Honor. The judge turned to me. And counsel for the respondent? Before I could open my mouth, the double doors at the back boomed open. Every head swiveled. My brother Ryan strode down the aisle like he owned the building, and half the people in it owed him favors. His suit was midnight black, cut so perfectly it looked bulletproof. His shoes made no sound on the tile. The whispers started immediately. Even the court reporter recognized him. He never glanced at anyone else. His eyes locked on me. He covered the distance in seconds, rested a steady hand on my shoulder for half a heartbeat, then sat down and set his briefcase on the table with a sound like a judge's gavel. I risked a look at Laura. Every drop of color had drained from her face. Her mouth actually hung open. She looked like someone who had bet everything on red and watched the ball land on black. Her lawyer went the color of spoiled milk. Ryan leaned in just long enough to murmur, "Traffic was murder, little brother," then straightened and addressed the court in a voice that filled every corner. "Ryan Sterling appearing for the respondent, Mr. James Carter, Your Honor." The judge's eyebrows rose. She knew exactly who he was. Then Ryan turned, slow and deliberate, and looked straight at Laura and her trembling attorney. A thin, humorless smile curved his mouth. "My apologies for the delay," he said, polite as poison. He let the silence hang just long enough, then delivered the line that ended her war before it started. "He doesn't have to pay me. I'm his older brother." Laura had come expecting surrender. She walked into a kill zone. Ryan opened his briefcase, removed a thick stack of pleadings, and the slaughter began. He rejected every one of her demands as predatory and filed in manifest bad faith. He announced our intent to counterclaim, demanded a complete forensic audit of every dollar spent in the last 3 years, and informed the court that Mrs. Carter would be paying all of Mr. Carter's legal fees going forward. Hargrove stood there opening and closing his mouth like a fish on dry land. The judge granted our motions on the spot. Round 1 was over in 12 minutes. Update 2: The next 8 weeks were a masterclass in controlled destruction. My brother doesn't litigate. He annihilates. He filed discovery demands so broad and airtight that opposing counsel's objections were laughed out of court. Laura had to produce every bank statement, every Venmo, every receipt for the last 5 years. She thought she had been clever. Ryan keeps forensic accountants on retainer the way other people keep Netflix. While she drowned in paperwork, Ryan scheduled depositions for everyone she knew, her mother, her sister, her work friends, even the barista she tipped too well. Pressure from every direction until something cracked. The dam broke during the deposition of her best friend, Sarah. Sarah walked in ready to lie for her. 3 hours later, she was crying. Ryan never raised his voice. He simply laid out credit card charges from a secret account tied to our joint savings. Weekend hotels in Napa, jewelry, intimate dinners for 2 on nights Laura had supposedly been at conferences that never existed. Then he slid a photograph across the table. Laura and a man I had never seen, arms around each other in front of a vineyard. "Tell me about Nicholas Vaughn," Ryan said quietly. Sarah folded like wet paper. Nicholas Vaughn, wealthy commercial developer, Laura's lover of 19 months, and the architect of the entire divorce plan. He had convinced her I would roll over, that she could strip the marriage clean and walk into her new life carrying bags of my money. The deposition of Nicholas himself was almost anticlimactic. The man strutted in oozing confidence and left 2 hours later looking like he needed a drink and a priest. He admitted everything. Affair, financial manipulation, even laughing with Laura about how pathetic I was for not fighting back. With those transcripts in hand, Laura's case didn't just collapse. It detonated. She had sworn under oath that there had been no infidelity. She had hidden marital funds, perjury, dissipation of assets, fraud on the court. Every switch Ryan needed to flip. Her lawyer called my brother begging for mercy, offering to let her walk away with nothing. Ryan's answer was one sentence. She lost the privilege of walking away the moment she decided to rob my brother. We were going all the way to trial. Final update 6 months to the day after I thought my life was over. The final hearing was a formality. Laura's attorney looked 10 years older. He advised her to take whatever we offered or risk jail time for perjury. The terms Ryan drafted were surgical and merciless. She lost any claim to the house. Alimony was denied with prejudice. The judge ordered her to repay every dollar, $68,000 and change, she had spent on her boyfriend, plus my legal fees, which Ryan generously billed at $1, just to make the point. She left the marriage with a tiny fraction of what she had demanded, a stack of her own legal bills she'll be paying off for years, and the public shame of having her entire plot exposed in open court. Nicholas Vaughn dropped her the same week the transcripts became public record. Turns out he only dates winners. Her friends scattered. Her reputation in our small city is radioactive. She thought she was leaving a broken man with nothing. Instead, she lost everything she tried to steal, and more. But the part that matters, the part that actually healed something in me, happened a month after the decree was signed. Ryan called and said only, "Meet me at Mom and Dad's place." I found him sitting on the front steps of the house we had fought over like idiots 5 years ago. We didn't talk about the case. We talked about Dad's terrible jokes and Mom's cinnamon rolls that could make you cry. We sat in the same spots we used to fight over the last slice of pie. Eventually he looked at me and said, "I was wrong, Jamie. This house isn't an asset. It's home." I forgot that. "I was wrong too," I told him. "I was trying to freeze it in time instead of letting it live. We didn't sell it. We kept it together. The past few months we've been out there every weekend. New boards on the porch, fresh paint, laughter echoing in rooms that had been silent too long. Side by side, hammers in hand, we rebuilt more than a house." Laura's final weapon was telling me I couldn't afford to fight her. Her greed and her arrogance forced me to pick up the phone and end a 5-year silence. She thought she was isolating me. All she really did was give me my brother back. She wanted me to leave the marriage with nothing. Today I still have my home, my savings, my dignity, and the only family that ever really mattered. Stronger than ever. Turns out I could afford the very best lawyer in the world, that he just wasn't for sale. He was for family.